So today's dismal jobs report actually looked like the worst in 3 years, and native-born Americans continue to lose jobs. Foreign-born Americans seem to be taking them away. We welcome to the show Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Rubio, great, sir. It's good to see you. I know this is a subject that interests you a lot, this whole imbalance. Native-born job loss, about 1 million, if I'm not mistaken, native-born job losses over the past 12 months, maybe slightly less, and about 1 million have gone to foreign-born workers. What do you make of it? What do you think about it, Senator?
Yeah, if you think at all the net jobs in the last 3.5 years, they've all gone to people not born in the United States. Now, some of them are U.S. citizens. They've been here a while, but a significant percentage of that is being driven by migrants coming into the country that Biden and Harris have allowed in. And so what the numbers tell us is that there are people that have lived here most, if not their entire lives, who have lost jobs. Meanwhile, some of those jobs are being taken, or the new jobs are being taken by people that are coming from overseas. And we know a large number of them, 9, 10, 11 million that have come in just the last 3 years because of the open border. That's extraordinary. Look, this is probably, I could argue, the worst jobs numbers, the ones we got in October, the worst job numbers in history. And what really bothers me is the way every one of these now, I think 14 of the last 16, massive down reductions, adjustments. They come back and they revise the numbers, but they get the headline. The media runs with the headline, oh, look at these great numbers for Biden and Harris. The economy's turning around. Then they come back and revise them. When I said that last month, they said I was lying. Biden himself said I was lying from the podium at the White House. And here we get the revisions now for October and September, or August and September. Another downward revision, a combined 112,000 jobs, less than what they said had been created.
Yeah, you're right about that, 112,000. It's like these jobs evaporate. The big one was 818,000. We'll probably see it again. Some people think when you see these downward revisions, it's a sign of a recession that's pending. The other thing is, unemployed and underemployed, marginally attached, those numbers are up well over 13 million. So I just wonder, there are other things going on, but this is part of the kitchen table, I think, failure of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Okay, they don't want to talk about this. Yeah. They'd rather call us all Nazis and fascists, but they don't want to talk about this, Senator.
Well, why would you talk about a record like that, which is their record? But people feel it in their lives. This is enormous disconnect between the people talking about finance, including, what I think is, I don't think there's any doubt that in the last week, we have seen a disinformation campaign by major media outlets in this country to influence this election that has no precedent. And it ranges from everything to saying that Trump called for Liz Cheney's execution, which is a lie. That's not what he was saying, all the way to trying to cover up what Biden said the other night, calling all of Trump supporters garbage. But this is part of the disinformation. They go out there and they say, oh, the economy's doing great. They have spent months trying to convince people that our economy is doing phenomenally well. And they point to things like the unemployment number, which doesn't tell you and doesn't account for the millions of people that you've just cited that have stopped looking for work or basically are working off and on as they need, but not really the kind of work that people want in order to start a family and build communities and get ahead in life. But that disconnect in people's real lives, they feel it, they see it, they feel this every single day. And that's why an overwhelming number of Americans are not happy with the direction of our country. So, yeah, if I'm the vice president, like Kamala Harris is now, under a Biden administration that presided over this economic disaster, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about fascists, Nazis, garbage supporters of Trump, anything but their record. That's what they want this to be about.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the one, actually, you were campaigning with Trump. And I think you were the one that told him about the garbage statement, that all supports are garbage. I think you leaned into him and told him that. I don't know what he said to you right at that point. But where I'm going here is all these smears, which you mentioned, I've talked about it on the show many nights. All these smears, Senator Rubio, I think they're going to hurt, not help Kamala Harris. I think they're going to help, not hurt Donald Trump. It's kind of like, throwing him in jail for 750 years and all the weaponization. That stuff helped Trump. And people are smart. They see it. They see a lie. They see a smear. They see a trashing. And they say, that's not for me. What do you think of that? It's a politically, does it hurt Trump? This is like their closing statement is a bunch of smears. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I think it does hurt them because one of the things it indicates is it's almost like a public temper tantrum. Look, these people, what Joe Biden said out loud is what most of them believe, including in the media and all these Democratic activists. They absolutely despise people that vote for Trump. And they absolutely despise these people that are supporting him. They can't understand why half the country or more supports Donald Trump. And they have terrible feelings about it. They're not going to say that openly and repeatedly until now at the end when they're realizing their mind is like this. How could this possibly be a close race? The only way it can be a close race is because half the country are really either dumb or even evil people. That's who supports Donald Trump. And they're having a temper tantrum about it. They absolutely despise the supporters. I cannot recall. Look, I haven't followed every campaign the last 52 years of my life, or 53 years of my life. But I can't recall a time in which a campaign, forget about attacking candidates, attack the people who support the candidate with a broad brush. Just say they're all terrible people, they're all evil, insulting women by saying the only reason why some women are voting for Trump is because their husbands are making them vote for Trump. I mean, stuff like that, you know, encouraging them to keep their vote from their husband and others. Now, we saw Mark Cuban said the other day, that's truly the stuff they believe. And when you're angry and you're having a temper tantrum because you can't believe you're about to lose this thing, you say out loud what you deeply believe inside and say to each other in private. That's what we're hearing, and I think that's the final insight people need to see how condescending these people truly are.
Senator Rubio, last one. You know, you're an influential leader in the Republican Party. Where are you going to spend the next 4 days? Are you going to go back to traveling with Trump, or how are you going to spend your time the last 4 days, sir?
Yeah, well, we're talking to them about that now. You know, he's got a bunch of rallies. I think he's got 7 in just the last 24 hours of the campaign out there. So we may be hooking up with them in a couple of those sites as well and doing a lot of interviews and teletown halls, everything. I'm going to do whatever they need me to do because this is truly the most important election of my lifetime. And I've been saying that now every election. They all keep getting more important. But I worked with Kamala Harris in the Senate. I cannot imagine what this country will be if she's our president. Honestly, I think we're headed for an era of poverty. We're headed for an era of insecurity. We're going to be unsafe here at home. And I think we're headed for an era of insecurity in the world that's going to lead to war. I hate to say that, but that's where I think we wind up with Kamala Harris. If we have Donald Trump, I think we have prosperity. I think we have security. And I think we have peace, strength and peace.
Wow, terrific stuff. Senator Rubio, thanks for your time and thanks for your wisdom. We appreciate it very, very much. Good luck in the campaign.